welcome back to Chris's Chop House. Today is brew day. I am so excited. It's been a while since I brewed a batch of beer. It's been a busy year or so, but I think that it is time to get this rolling again. So today we are making one of my favorites. So it is the holidays, and just my personal preference, when it's the holidays, I like a good English ale. Preferably today we're going to make a chocolate stout. We're going to be using English ale yeast to get that wonderful texture and mouthfeel that it gives a beer when it's done doing its thing. So let's go over the ingredients. Okay, so here are our ingredients. So let's start with the wheat, because this is step one. We have to steep our grains because we're making a partial grain batch today. Usually you either do beer from all extract. So this is a sample of extract. This here is refined syrup from barley, dark roasted barley. So this is a component that some people just brew beer just out of this, okay? Today, we're gonna do a partial grain batch where we'll use some extract, but we are also gonna use some grain. The first grain I'm gonna talk about, this here, this is called dark wheat. This is called dark wheat. You can look at that color. It almost looks like a caramel colored wheat, but there actually is something called caramel wheat that has a little more color to this. But this is going to be the base here. And then these two, I know they look nearly identical when you're looking at them. Oh, I do one at a time. I know they look identical, but this one is called black wheat, or black roasted wheat, black malt. So that's what this one is called. Really dark, really chocolatey. Without even adding coffee, this can give you those chocolatey coffee notes in your beer. And this one's called chocolate grains, or chocolate roasted grain. It has a bunch of different names to it, but today we're calling this chocolate malt. It's very similar. It's not as heavily roasted, so the flavor isn't so chocolatey. And I would almost say roasty. Like when you roast a coffee bean, it doesn't have that deep roasty color and flavor to it, but it does have a deep, robust, chocolatey flavor to it. So these three are going to steep at 155 degrees or so for about 30 minutes. Once these have steeped, and you're going to steep this like tea, we're going to pour it right into the hot water, cut the flame down, and then let it steep at 150 degrees for 30 minutes, up to 155, 56. The next ingredients we're going to talk about are the hops. So we're going to do two stages of hops. This is what they look like. They have a pellet look to them because they have been dried and then pelletized to create this this look here. Now, there's nothing wrong with using these. Actually, it's a standard to just use the pellets, okay? Because if you're using real hops, the actual hop flowers, it will take you a very large amount of hop flowers to do what this can do in its size and portion. So this is the packaging that it comes in. This is the brand I'm using today. They're called Fuggles. We're doing a two different steepings of Fuggles. We're gonna do one at the 40-minute mark and one at the 20-minute mark. Call that almost like a finishing hop. And this one's actually great for English ales and stouts. That's why we're using it today. We got dried coriander. Dried coriander. This is just a great aromatic ingredient to put in beer. This will help cut down the maltiness and the hoppiness from the other ingredients. Help balance the beer. This is freshly ground coffee. This is just a medium roast, fresh ground coffee. We got it locally from a local coffee store. So this is really pungent, very pungent, but still this one also has a chocolatey smell to it. So I'm hoping that this coffee flavor comes through, because we're gonna put this in near the end. And then finally, we're pitching some yeast. This is SAF 04. This yeast is perfect for your English ales. So this can ferment at around room temperature a little bit less than room temperature. So which is ideal for us because we don't have a large refrigerator. All right, so those are the ingredients. I've already showed you the dark malt that we're going to use. This is going to be after we've steeped our grains. All right, team, let's get to making some beer now.
Okay, so we're going to steep our grains in 155-degree water. We're pouring the grains right in. We don't want to do what's traditionally called a grain sock or grain bag for this. I just feel personally when you're doing these mixtures, you don't get all the sugary malt mixture off those grains. They just you have to do a lot of work rinsing them after the fact. So we're going to exclude the sock and throw them right in. As you can see, we're straining the mixture now. It finishes 30 minutes steep. All I'm doing is using a mesh strainer to catch the grains as it pours in and putting them into a separate bowl. So the next step is going to be rinsing the grains. All you're going to do is take 1 gallon up to 2 gallons of clean water that you know is already filtered and pour that slowly over the grains 2 or 3 times to get any remaining malt or wort off of those grains to continue your boil. Okay, now at this point we've rinsed those grains. We've taken that 2 gallons of water and added that to our initial 1.5 gallons. So you should have in the ballpark of 3.5 gallons of water at this point. And you're going to add the malt mixture, the liquid malt extract, and add that to your pot. Once you've scooped all the malt grain syrup out of those containers, you're going to turn up the heat. Stir it consistently. You don't want to get anything burnt to the bottom, and bring your mash up to, or your wort at this point, bring your wort up to boiling. As you can see here, we now have our boiling. So now the clock starts. 60 minutes starts now. So the next step is going to be at the 40-minute mark. We're going to put in 1 ounce of our hops and the coriander into one of the sachet bags, grain neon bags. You can see I quickly put it across the screen, or you can use a grain sock or a grain bag. It doesn't matter, but you want to use something that's like tea bag like material to put this in, and we're going to put this in at the 40-minute mark, and it's going to stay in all the way to the end of the boil.
We have reopened the bag and added our second 1 ounce portion of Fuggle's hops. We've kept the coriander and the original hops in the bag. We just added the other ones. And we have 20 minutes left in the boil. This is the coffee. And this coffee is coarsely ground, and this is going to go in here for the last 20 minutes.
Okay, so now we are in the cooling phase of our wort. We finished our 60-minute boil. We removed the grain bags at this point, and what you see in front of you is called a wort chiller. It's a copper coil where cold water goes in one side, and then the warmer water comes out the other side. So what you see here is I'm going to connect it to my kitchen sink. I just have two fittings on that line that goes from 3/4 to 1/2 and 1/2 to 3/8. I connect it to my kitchen sink line. I cut it onto the cold water side, and then we just let the wort chiller do its job. As the cold water spirals through the copper piping, it removes heat, which allows us to cool our wort without adding any ice. If you've brewed beer before, sometimes recipes say add ice at this point to cool it down, and then that ice is a part of the recipe, whereas once it melts, it becomes part of the beer, and you get to your 5 gallons of beer for the recipe. I don't like doing that. I think ice machines are never cleaned. Think about how many times you've cleaned the ice machine in your home personally. I don't think that's a good idea because you're adding particulates and contaminants into your beer. Please don't do that. Use a clean wort chiller to cool your beer, and then you just take clean filtered water and bring your beer up to the 5-gallon capacity once you've moved it into your bucket. Don't use any kind of ice or other contaminants that can become a part of the beer. Essentially, at the end of the day, it can potentially change the flavor complexity of your beer in ways you don't comprehend until the end of the fermentation. So don't do that. So at this point, you can clearly see that the dial is moving closer and closer towards the ideal under 70-degree mark we want to add our yeast.
So at this point, we are about 69 degrees. Probably hard to see that, but we are at 69 degrees. So it's been about 28 minutes. So 28 minutes without having to dilute my wort any further with ice or anything else. I've cooled this down with this wort chiller. Okay. So now that the product is cool, it's ready for yeast. So what you're going to see next is I'm going to move this out of this vessel and into the white bucket for first stage fermentation. The first stage fermentation will be about 10 days. So I'm going to move it now, and then you'll see me back in a second. So here we go. This is pretty much the final product. We're getting ready to take the specific gravity, or the original gravity of it. All that is it shows how much sugar is in this mixture. Because when I pitch the yeast are going to eat the sugars, create carbon dioxide and alcohol. So we want to see what we start with, because then we measure when the yeast is done what's left. So we can try to get some semblance of consistency. So here we go. I'm about to take the specific gravity. Hold on one second. All right. So this is what we use to measure the specific gravity of our beer. You see it has little numbers there. And it's going to tell us exactly how much sugar is in this. So usually it's 1.4 or 5, something like that. Here we go. There we go. Should stop bobbing here in a second. definitely looking like it's at the 15 mark here. 1 point, I think that's 1.6, if I'm reading that right. 1.6. So our specific gravity before we add our yeast is going to be 1.6. I think it's a little higher. That might be 1.62. I'm seeing some green pop up there. Yep, I'm gonna say 1.62. Yeah, it's definitely some green there. All right, so that's the 1.62 is gonna be our starting gravity. I'm gonna record that, then we're gonna pitch the yeast, we're gonna put our airlock on, and then we're done. So this is the yeast we're using. When we say we're gonna pitch the yeast, we're gonna sprinkle it across the top, then we're gonna top it, airlock it, and we're all done. That's going to turn into millions of little organisms. They're going to make it taste good. So now we're going to top it. Okay, hold on. So we're at the end of brew day. I am tired. Our wort is a fancy way of saying pretty much sugar water for beer. But our wort is completed. We've pitched the yeast. Now, I did taste it before we pitched the yeast, and I felt like though it had a 20-minute steep with the coffee, I wanted more coffee flavor. So I left the coffee sachet in the fermentation container. It's only going to be in here for stage 1 fermentation. So I'm going to pull it out before it goes into stage 2. But I definitely really want to taste the coffee, okay? I'm very happy with where it's landed. I know you saw bits and pieces. Really, as you can see, brewing is patience. Lots of cleaning and patience. Well, all that's left for tonight is this bucket is gonna go in a cool, dark place for about 10 days. So by cool, with this being an ale yeast, it's perfectly fine around 70 degrees. Okay, ideally I would love for it to stay around 68. I just don't think the space I'm gonna leave it in is gonna be close to 68 degrees, probably closer to 70 or 71, but it's fine. We're gonna keep a close eye on it. If this airlock right here, I'm actually already seeing a little bit of activity. Now, probably by tomorrow afternoon, this thing is going to be bubbling like crazy. Maybe I can get some shots of it tomorrow when I get a chance. But it's going to bubble like crazy as the yeast are eating up all the sugars and essentially farting. When they fart carbon dioxide. So, and they pee alcohol, which sounds just terrible. But that's a really simple way of saying what they do, the yeast. So that's it for the day. So day 1 complete. We brewed our first batch. That's the end of part 1. So the next thing we're going to do is in 10 days we'll move it to this next container where it's going to sit for about 3 weeks. We're gonna let this go for stage 2 for about 3 weeks, maybe a little less, we'll see. But we're definitely gonna at least do 14 to 18 days, test it, and then we'll probably do another 4 or 5 days. So we'll go from there. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was educational. I'm super excited. This is gonna be an awesome winter beer when it's all said and done. It's almost gonna be like a Guinness, which I'm so excited for. But see you in the next one, okay? I hope you enjoyed. Welcome to Chris's Chop House. And more content to come. Like, subscribe. Can't wait for you to see this beer pouring out into a glass. We're still a few weeks away, but see you next time.